All right, one of the things I sometimes will have people comment on is, see me working out and, having a, pretty good result, and they'll say, well, could you imagine how much better you'd be if you'd added some rice or some fruit or a little bit of carbohydrates to your diet, and, you would clearly perform better. Well, I want to tell you guys about an experiment I did not that long ago, a few months back. I did just that. I experimented for a week, adding in about 100 grams of carbohydrates, primarily in the form of fruit. And what I saw was that initially, it didn't seem to have much of an impact on me, either good or bad. I tolerated it fine. I was wearing a CGM at the time. When I ate it, in conjunction with my meal, like, with the steak and eggs or whatever I was eating at the time, adding the fruit in there didn't do much, significant to my blood glucose. If I ate it sort of by itself, just like a couple apples, say 2 apples, I had a pretty significant rise in my blood glucose. Now, to be fair, I'm chronically not used to dealing with carbohydrates. I just don't ingest them much at all, very little at all. So I don't have the sort of the metabolic machinery upregulated to deal with that appropriately. So it makes sense that we would see this pretty significant glucose spike. Now, I didn't see really any benefit in the gym. I just could not see anything different at all. I mean, it didn't appear better. What I did see, which was a negative in my view, was I started to develop just a little bit of GI discomfort. It wasn't severe. It wasn't like, oh my God, I'm horrible. But it was just that sensation that my guts were just a little bit kind of just mildly irritated. And that started occurring by about day 3 or 4. And then by day 5, 6, 7, I was like, I just don't like the way I feel. And so I just abandoned that. And that has been my experience with adding any significant amount of fruit in there. So this was, again, 100 grams, which is still not a lot of carbohydrates in the grand scheme of things. Remember, I'm routinely consuming 4,000 calories a day, so it's a very small percentage. It's 10% of the calories. And I just don't, for whatever reason, prefer that. And so for those that are saying, you should just add these things in and eat a balanced diet, it just doesn't work well for me. And that's fair enough. If it worked well for you, I'm not going to say anything that you shouldn't do that. But like I said, when it comes to my own particular health, it is what it is. And you have to sort of recognize that, be objective about it. Like I said, I didn't feel awful, but it was just like, I just didn't feel that good. And like I said, I prefer to feel better, generally. Now, does that mean from time to time someone would have a piece of fruit and would have no big issue for them? Probably so. But eating it consistently, you think about how many of us, again, depending on what part of the world we would have lived in, the access to fruit on a regular basis would have been pretty unlikely. The fact that we can eat strawberries and mangoes in January and in North America is pretty bizarre. That's not normal at all. So if anything, seasonally would have made more sense, or very small, infrequent amounts would make the most sense. But to consistently consume, a certain amount of carbohydrates every day may not make sense historically, and certainly doesn't make sense for me personally today. I just do better without it, and my performance is just fine without carbohydrates. I know there's people out there saying you got to have carbs to perform. As I mentioned before, I think if you're chronically adapted, and when I mean chronically adapted to athletics, I'm talking 6 months, a year perhaps, to utilizing fat as a high intensity energy source, and all but the most extreme levels require any glucose, which we can certainly supply via lactate reshuttling, gluconeogenesis, hepatic glycogenolysis, all these ways we have to get glucose into our bloodstream and then thus into our cells is still there. Those mechanisms are still there. And if we're adapted to using fat at a higher and higher intensity, which I clearly am, then you're fine with that. Again, all right, let me know what you guys think. Have any of you guys ever added fruit, and how did it do for you? I'm sure some of you guys, it's positive. Some of you guys still do that. Some of you guys may be negative. And it depends on what you're dealing with, things like autoimmune disease. So it's interesting to sort of see what people tolerate, what people don't. And I'm one that, for me, fruit and carbohydrates in general just aren't that good for me. All right, guys. It may be part of the fact I'm getting older. I think a lot of people will find as they get older, their tolerance for carbohydrates tends to decrease. Again, let me know what you guys' experience is. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.